This is a series I've been making about dating in a new way, dating to take the exhaustion, the disappointment, all the frustration out of dating and actually enjoy yourself. So last time I gave you the first move or the first shift, the thing you name at the start of a date to shift the whole dynamic from a silent audition to a genuine exploration. And before we go any further, if you tried that and it felt awkward, it's actually okay. It's good. It means you did it for real. Awkward and honest beats smooth and performative any day. So today I want to give you the second shift. And this one is actually subtler than the first one. The first is a sentence you say out loud at the beginning of a date. It's concrete. You either do it or you don't. This one is actually internal. So it's a little harder to catch. Hello and welcome to this episode of Practicing Love. So last time I gave you the first move or the first shift, the thing you name at the start of a date to shift the whole dynamic from a silent audition to a genuine exploration. It means you did it for real. Awkward and honest beats smooth and performative any day. So today I want to give you the second shift. And this one is actually subtler than the first one. What I've seen again and again in the people I work with is that once the shared context is named, right, that was the first shift, and the date gets moving, there's genuine relief, at least for the first part of the date. And something shifts, right? The pressure drops. But without deciding to, most people slip back into an old way of orienting, or a familiar question starts to weave its way underneath the conversation that you're having with each other. And from that point, it starts shaping what you say, what you notice, how you present who you actually are. So this is a question that may be surprising, and it's a shift from how a lot of people think about this. And by the end of the episode, I'm going to give you this question that you can carry into your next date that keeps you connected to and enjoying yourself when it would be easy to get lost in the stress of wondering, like I said, whether you are wanted, whether you are liked. Okay, going back to last week's episode, let's say you've named the shared context for the date. You're both here to do something different, right? Rather than being impressive, you're going to be honest. Or maybe you've said, "Hey, can we just keep this relaxed and, not try to assess each other? And can we really get to know each other?" Or whatever your own version of that was. And let's say that the person across from you said yes, or they smiled, or their shoulders dropped, or you could visibly see the relief, right? And something shifted. The conversation feels less performative. There's more room to breathe. Let's say you're noticing things and saying things that actually matter to you instead of things that you are using for impression management, right? That's, again, what the shared context makes possible. Then 30 minutes in, 20 minutes in, who knows, right? Sometime you start falling back into that old habit. It creeps in. And it doesn't feel exactly like something's, bad or wrong. It's just that monitoring starts again. The scanning, the reading of micro expressions, the trying to figure out, is this other person across from me happy? Am I getting it right? So the date starts to feel a little bit more like the ones you had before that were disappointing, that were frustrating. I shared last week that the organizing question underneath most dates is some version of, do they like me? Sometimes it sounds like, how am I coming across? Is this going well? Are they still interested? Or did I just lose them with that last thing that I said? Different words, but same focus, right? All the attention is on the other person's internal experience and trying to read them. And I just want to say that it's not a neurotic thing to do. It's human because you care about the outcome, right? So of course you're going to track to some degree what's happening over there. It's a very human and completely understandable experience. But the interesting part is that the more self-aware you are, the more sophisticated and invisible your version of this becomes. So it may not look like obvious approval seeking or may not feel like anxiety. It can feel like a kind of attunement, or that you're being emotionally intelligent. You're reading the room and staying present to the other person. But it produces the opposite of what happens with presence. Because what's actually happening is that when the primary question is, do they like me? It's a split of your attention, right? Part of you in the conversation, part of you watching the conversation from the outside with this commentary running in your mind. Oh, they seem less engaged. Oh, that landed well. Oh, I could have said that differently, right? That part of you is managing the date instead of inside the date. I did this for years, and not in a way, like I'm saying, that looked dramatic from the outside. From the outside, I think I really seemed warm and present and curious, but there was a part of my attention in the background, tracking, calibrating, noticing how I was breathing and how my body was moving, and whether I was um, doing something right. I thought that it was this kind of attunement and being responsive. So that costs you a lot on a date. Not only can the person across from you feel it, right? Even if they can't name it, there's a quality of being available for connection that disappears when someone is half monitoring themselves. And you probably know this feeling from the other side. You've probably been on dates where you could sense that the person was only partially there, and it made you feel like you had to work harder to get through to them, or what you said wasn't quite landing. It was a little bit lost in translation. So the quality of unavailability is what that kind of monitoring creates. And then the connection that forms when both people are doing this is not a real connection. It's a connection, as I said last week, between two performances. Two people monitoring themselves, both tracking the other, neither one of them truly there. That's why a date stays shallow. It's not necessarily because people lack depth. So, the most interesting parts of people go offline when they're in that loop of monitoring and wondering. Okay, so here's the question that you can ask yourself instead of, am I wanted? Am I liked? Do I like how I'm showing up in this conversation? Do I like how I'm showing up in this conversation? The shift is not, do they like me, but do I like who I am with this person? And what this question is tracking, or what the shift is, are you being honest, or are you trying or performing or feeling a sense that you need to prove you're good enough? It's, are you saying what you actually think, or are you saying what you think will go over well and they will like it and it will have you liked? It's, are you genuinely curious about this person, or are you stuck in that loop auditing your own performance? It's, do you feel more like yourself right now or less like yourself? Now, notice that what this question doesn't do, it doesn't make you self-absorbed. It doesn't pull you away from the other person. You're still in the conversation, actually even more, right? Now you're in it as yourself instead of someone watching themselves having this conversation. This is the core shift that I write about in the Honest Dating Manual. You're moving from, does this person want me, to, am I choosing this connection? So these aren't subtle variations of the same question. They put you in an entirely different position. The original question, am I liked, am I wanted, makes you the object of someone else's evaluation. If you haven't yet taken the quiz to see what keeps you from having the best love and sex of your life, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. You'll get a personalized report of your strengths and challenges in the 5 crucial areas that lead to your most fulfilling and exciting love and sex life. Go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz to find out. The second one, the new one, makes you the subject of your own experience. And your experience is the one thing you have direct, reliable access to in real time. So when the primary question is about them or how they see you, you're navigating by using your self-doubt, right? Your GPS is based, your compass is based in self-doubt. But when it's about you and your own enjoyment and your own intuition and your own sense of how things are going, you're navigating by using your self-worth. Can you feel the difference? Take a moment, because that's big. Take a moment to feel that, right? Self-doubt means you put yourself below someone else. You shadow your own desires with theirs, giving them what they think or what you think they want. When you're paying attention to your own experience rather than over focusing or monitoring out there, a few things start to happen. You will notice compatibility more accurately. You'll be able to track their character and their values. You'll catch things you wouldn't have while focused on making a good impression. You'll have the freedom to say what you actually think rather than a sense of having to be more careful than you'd like to be or editing yourself, right? You wouldn't have caught all of that if your attention was on reading their face. When you shift to the second question, you also reveal more of yourself because you no longer are trying to prove anything or you don't have to keep up any kind of performance. There's actually more of you present. And that's what creates the conditions for the other person to also stop performing, right? Discovery becomes more mutual instead of this parallel monologue happening where neither one of you is truly in it with each other. And after a date, you've had a real experience. You know that you've discovered something real. It's not a mire of confusion that becomes a downward spiral at the end of the night when you're alone and you're wondering, how did it go? Right? You actually know what happened in that room and you're beginning to know who that person is. And you're checking in to see, is this someone I could create a future with? I had a client I worked with who was in her mid 40s and she'd been divorced for a couple years. And by her own description, she felt like she was good at dating. She was warm and articulate and emotionally intelligent. And she read people really well, right? She wasn't someone who went into dates naive. And she came to me because she kept hitting the same wall. Dates weren't awful, but it was like a roller coaster ride. She couldn't find someone she was really interested in. And after the dates, she would have those spirals of replaying the moments and trying to decode the things that were said. And then that anxious ride of waiting for a text and reading into the timing when the text came, and everything felt destabilizing. And when I asked her where her focus was on dates and after those dates, right? Like, what was she thinking? What was she holding about those dates? She said that she wasn't really sure what she was doing or what was happening because she was actually focused on the other person. So she thought, okay, the right thing to do is to focus on the other person. So she wasn't even really aware of what was going on for her inside. So we had her try something different. On her next date, she took the question with her and she kept it in the background. Do I like how I'm showing up in this conversation? Am I enjoying how I'm showing up in this conversation? It's just an orienting shift, a difference, a question to hold so that she could come back to that when she noticed herself slipping into monitoring herself or questioning herself. And when she came back to our next session, she said two things happened. First, she had a much more interesting conversation than she had had in months on dates because she was saying what she actually thought and what mattered to her instead of what she'd calculated would come across well. And second, halfway in, she noticed she was bored. And she wasn't sure why. She wasn't sure if it was the person or if it was the conversation they were having, had gone more surface level and it had stayed there. And in the past, she said she would have overridden that, kept things smooth. She would have walked away from the date and just realized, like, okay, this person's not for me. But it's not a full representation of who a person is. So she didn't just settle this time. She said something. She said, like, can I ask you something more real? And then the date shifted and it became more interesting and they became more connected. She said she came home having had a real connection that evening and she even felt surprised and delighted. And she was aware of what she'd enjoyed and which parts had fallen flat. right? She stayed true to herself throughout enough to notice how it had gone. And she felt empowered to shift a date that was boring into something much more enjoyable. She said it was the first time in a long time she'd enjoyed herself on a date, that she left a date without that spiral, afterward. And she was excited to see this person again. And even though she would have written him off before the risk she took to shift the conversation, it's actually more simple than it seems when you navigate from your own experience rather than who you think you should be or what you think you should do. You don't end up in as many downward emotional spirals from losing connection with yourself. That's why those spirals happen. It's not because of what someone does out there. It's because you've lost connection with yourself, and you're much more likely when you're not doing that to enjoy someone's company. And no matter where the date goes, right, you've maintained that connection with yourself. Before I close the episode, there's one quick thing. If something in the series has landed for you, even one idea that's shifted something, the most useful thing you can do is follow the show on whatever platform you're listening on. We are one episode away from the fourth and final shift in this series. So if you're not following it, you may not see it when it drops. And I want you to have it. And if you're on Apple Podcasts and you found this series worth your time, a review there makes a huge difference, not just for the algorithm, but for the person who's waiting and enduring dating right now and doesn't know there's a different way to approach it. They're searching for something, and a review really helps them find it. So 1 or 2 sentences is all it takes. And if someone in your life is dating after 40, coming home from dates feeling invisible or discouraged, just send them this episode. It's a small thing that might give them a new way to think about this or a new question to ask themselves that they've never thought before. Okay. So the question most people are running mid-date is what you're going to shift. Do they like me? Am I doing what it takes to be liked and wanted? The question that changes the whole situation for you is, do I like who I'm being in this conversation? Do I like how I'm showing up? Am I actually enjoying how I'm interacting? Bringing it back into your own enjoyment rather than who you think you're supposed to be or what you think you're supposed to do for this person out there. Those 2 questions produce entirely different date experiences. The first one, you become a passenger in your date. The second one puts you back in the driver's seat to navigate by your own reliable inner compass, right? Your own honest experience of what's happening between you two. You are not just the object of someone else's evaluation. You are the subject of your own experience. And when you treat your experience as trustworthy, available, worth paying attention to, dating stops being something that happens to you. It becomes something you are co-creating and empowered to create. The practical thing to carry into your next date at any point when you notice you've gone into that monitoring mode, the return is the same. Come back to yourself. Am I enjoying this? Am I being honest in this conversation right now? That is the compass. Use that. And if not, if I'm not enjoying myself, if I'm not enjoying this conversation, what would make the date more enjoyable? What would make it more interesting? Ask yourself. Next time is the third move. And this is the one people are most afraid of because it involves something real in a moment when the easiest thing would be to say nothing. It happens when something comes up on a date that doesn't quite feel great, or a difference that matters, a moment of discomfort, something that feels slightly off. And you have the option to either smooth it over or address it. And most people just, like I said, most people just smooth it over and walk away. The third move is how to navigate it in a way that doesn't blow anything up and that tells you faster than anything else whether this person has the capacity for the kind of relationship you actually want. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Follow the show, leave a review if this has supported you, and try this out. I'm excited to hear how it goes. And I'll be back soon for the final episode in this series. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Practicing Love. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and gained insight into yourself and your current and past relationships and inspiration for what's possible. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review to help people find us. If you'd like more support in your love life, be sure to get your copy of my best-selling book, Honest Sex, at shanajamescoaching.com/free. That's shanajamescoaching.com/free. And we'll see you next time.